Percents are fractions with a denominator of 100. We can use this information to help us turn any percent into a fraction. So for example, 50% can be written as a fraction if I take that 50 and give it a denominator of 100. Remember, percents mean per 100, so it's like out of 100. 50% is 50 out of 100. That can help us because that means every fraction can be made into a percent by creating an equivalent fraction that has a denominator of 100. So look at 1/2. If I want to turn 1/2 into a percent, I need to create a fraction that has a denominator of 100. Well, I know using equivalent fractions, to go from 2 to 100, I'm going to multiply by 50. It's like 50 groups of 2 make up 100. Whatever I do to my denominator, I'm also going to do to my numerator, and I can see that 1/2, 1 times 50, is 50. That will give me 50 out of 100. 50 out of 100 is the same as 50%. And we can use this information to help us solve word problems. 11 of the 25 students in Mrs. Shaw's math class are girls. Find the percentage of girls in Mrs. Shaw's math class. Well, the first thing we want to do is look at the fraction we're given to start with. We know there are 11 girls out of 25 students. 11 out of 25. If I want to change this into a percent, it's like saying, what if I didn't have 25 students? What if I had 100 students? The ratio 11 out of 25 is going to be what compared to 100? Well, to go from 25 to 100, I'm going to multiply this denominator by 4. So I'm going to do the same thing on my numerator to create an equivalent fraction. 11 times 4 gives me 44. 44 out of 100 is 44%. So we can say that 44% of Mrs. Shaw's math class are girls. Okay. Now, not every problem is going to be as straightforward as this. You're not always going to be able to go from one fraction directly to a fraction with a denominator of 100. The cross-country team has 40 members. After the cross-country meet, 12 members rode home with their parents instead of riding the team bus. What percent of the team rode home with their parents? So again, if I set up my original fraction, I know that I had 12 members ride home with their parents out of 40 total members. Now I can't find a number to easily multiply and get a denominator of 100. 40 times something to give me 100, it's going to end up being like a decimal. It's not going to be a whole number. But I want to do this in a way that's going to be easy for me. So I'm going to think about what I know about 12 and 40. And in my head, I think, okay, both of these numbers can be divided by 4. Now you might be thinking, why would you do that? Well, 40 divided by 4 gives me a denominator of 10. And 12 divided by 4 would give me a numerator of 3. I know 3/10 can easily be changed into a fraction with a denominator of 100, because I know that 10 times 10 will give me 100. 3 times 10 would give me 30. Now 30 out of 100 is the same as 30%. So I know that 30% of the team rode with their parents. Okay? So sometimes you have to take an extra step in there. You can't go right from one fraction to another fraction with a denominator of 100. Sometimes you need a stepping stone. Let's look at one last example here. In a bag of 200 M&Ms, 64 of the M&Ms are red. What percent of the bag has red M&Ms? So again, let's set this up. I know there are 64 red out of 200 total. Now we said to make a percent, we need a fraction that has a denominator of 100. This problem's a little different because we're starting with a number bigger than 100, but we're going to follow the exact same process. To go from 200 to 100, I would divide this denominator by 2. Whatever I do to the denominator, I have to do to the numerator. So 64 divided by 2 gives me 32. 32 out of 100 is the same as 32%. So 32% of the bag has red M&Ms.